On this week's episode of Eat Better Food Today, we talk with Ambassador Ertharin Cousin on what's working in places that otherwise would be food deserts. What's their secret sauce? Partnerships for one. The community must own the store. Reducing shrink. People feeling safe. People define their communities by whether they have an operating grocery store. And the life you aspire to, you will not achieve if you do not have health. Hello and welcome to the podcast Eat Better Food Today. I'm your host, Ken Coonahan, and I'm excited to be sharing insights on why we believe that health and longevity begins with the food we eat. The goal of this podcast will be to inspire, educate, and enable folks to live a healthier life and do it affordably. My wife and I have been on this journey for over 11 years and continue to work on it every single day. Percent of the profits from this podcast will be put towards child hunger with an initial focus on the poor suburb in America, East Cleveland, Ohio. As a reminder, please subscribe and rate the podcast. Subscriptions are the lifeblood for any podcast. I'll just mention our sponsor up front here is Cleveland Kitchen. Think of Cleveland Kitchen as providing easy gut health with their fermented foods, which means better brain health with just 2 forkfuls a day. On this episode, we're grateful to have Ertharin Cousin. Ertharin is the CEO for Food Systems for the Future, the Managing Director and CEO of SFS Ventures, Distinguished Fellow for the Chicago Council on Global Affairs, former Executive Director for the UN's World Food Program, and a visiting scholar at the Stanford University Center for Food Security and Environment. She also sits on the boards for Bayer and Mondelez. Welcome, Ertharin.
Thank you. Delighted to be here.
Delighted to have you. So I always get interesting answers to this first question. It's kind of my icebreaker question, but I always ask what you had for breakfast this morning.
What did I have for breakfast this morning? I am, you're reaching me in Springfield, Illinois, where I'm attending the Illinois Farm Bureau conference. And they have a number of vendors who are providing the food for this conference who are local producers. So I had a locally produced piece of artesian bread this morning with nuts and cranberries. It was very rich and very delicious.
Nice. I wish
With
you
of
could
course
share that with me.
a cup of Starbucks coffee with an extra shot and oat milk.
Sounds delicious.
And it was.
So you have a degree from the University of Georgia, and now you're CEO.
I have a law degree from the
Law
University
degree,
of Georgia.
yes.
And my degree's from the University of Illinois in Chicago.
And now you're the CEO for Food Systems for the Future. Can you kind of share your journey from, law school to CEO?
Well, from law school to CEO. I think it's important that we even go back a bit further.
Okay.
I grew up in a family where service was very much part of the core values that my parents instilled in us. Service to community, to church, and to country. And I went to law school to make a difference in the world. I was one of those people who was not looking to go to law school to see if I could end up on Wall Street, but knowing that I really wanted to come back and make a difference in the lives of people in the communities where I lived. Came back to Chicago and very quickly realized that the problems that walked into the office of the firm that I worked on in the community on the south side of Chicago were not legal problems. Well, they were legal problems that had subcontexts that were manifesting themselves as legal problems. They were education problems, economic problems, hunger problems, housing problems. And what I was doing was putting Band-Aids on by solving their legal problems for them. They left still suffering from the problems that created the legal situations that they found themselves in, which oftentimes were bankruptcy, in really tough cases, spousal abuse and child abuse. And so I knew that working to address the legal problems was much like and I don't want to denigrate plumbers or farmers or plumbers or lawyers, but I felt like it was the plumber. You're just putting the right wrench to screw the screw to stop the water from running, but the water was still running. And so I wanted to do something else. And so I got involved in politics, ran for office unsuccessfully, which is actually probably the best thing that ever happened to me. Because if I had won, I ran for Water Reclamation District Commission. If I had won, I would have been a Water Reclamation District Commissioner. Not to suggest we don't need really good Water Reclamation District Commissioners, but it would have really detoured me from the journey that I found myself on. And so I worked in politics across the state of Illinois, doing redistricting work, supporting. I worked in the Office of the Attorney General doing consumer assistance work. Then this guy named Bill Clinton, I'm that old, ran for president, and
I'm that old too, by the way.
I had the opportunity to go to Washington to first serve as the research director and then the deputy chief of staff for the National Democratic Party, and then moved over from there to the State Department as White House liaison at the State Department. It was very much like receiving a grad degree in foreign affairs, because I was at the State Department. I was a backbencher in the morning meetings for Somalia, Black Hawk Down, for the genocide in Rwanda, for the Kosovo War. So it was an amazing time to be a young person sitting in the room when all of this is happening in the world. But and this was all during the Clinton administration, and when he won re-election, I decided it was time for me to go home and deal with my personal life. And so I became the vice president of government and community affairs for our local supermarket, Jewel Food Stores. And they hired me to help them build stores in underserved communities because of my political ties across the state of Illinois. They thought I was qualified to do this. And then they dropped me into a course at the University of Chicago called Finance for Non-Financial Executives, and rounded out the edges on my advocacy and public policy and legal experience by giving me finance experience. And then the company was merged with first Albertsons, and then first American Stores, and then Albertsons. And every time we'd have a merger, I'd get a promotion. And I was promoted to senior vice president, chief communications officer, chief government affairs officer for Albertsons. And it was a way to see the food system from end to end, because grocery retailing, this was before Walmart really got into selling food, and grocery retailing was very different. And the corner grocery stores in every community was how people access their food. And I learned the business from top to bottom, but very quickly realized I didn't really want to be in that business. And so I was offered an opportunity to serve as the executive vice president of what is now Feeding America. At that point, it was America's Second Harvest. And 6 months after I started the job, Katrina happened in New Orleans. So
small hurricane,
small
yes.
little hurricane that affected food access for millions of people across the state. And that was the first time that people really got to know what is now Feeding America, because the food banks, the 200 plus food banks across the United States, are the backbones for all of those pantries and local food access facilities across our country. And so this was the first time that they were called upon in a significant way. And we built that machine and strengthened the ability of the network to perform in emergencies. At that time, it was a small organization operating. Feeding America, as you may know now, is the largest charity in the United States.
That's huge, yeah.
And I think that much of the work that we were able to do to build the reputation of the organization to deliver started then. But I went, after leaving Feeding America, I started my own business, working to create public-private partnerships, because I always had this inkling that charity and government alone were not going to address the issues of food insecurity, that we needed to really get business involved.
Mm-hmm.
Just as I started this business, this guy named Barack Obama decides he's going to run for president. And he happened to be my neighbor. And so he said, "Hey, I'm going to run for president. Will you help?" And I did. And so he was elected. And when I was asked what I wanted to do, if I wanted to work in the White House, I said, nope, I want to serve as U.S. Ambassador for Food and Agriculture because I'd had this experience working to address food insecurity through Feeding America, through the grocery store, seeing private sector. And so I'd also served, I didn't say this, but when I left the Clinton administration, they appointed me to what is called the BIFAD, the Board for International Food and Agricultural Development. And so I saw all of the agricultural development activity that the U.S. was involved in across the globe. And so I wanted to work in that space. And so I was confirmed as U.S. ambassador, and I served for 3 years in that role. And then at the end of that 3 year period, the President and Secretary Clinton put me forward to the Secretary General of the UN to serve as the Executive Director of the World Food Program. And that was an amazing opportunity where we fed some 85 million people a year in about 80 countries around the world. And so you get to see what the face of hunger really looks like in different countries around the world, and not just see what it looks like, but actually provide the solutions to address those
Mm-hmm.
challenges. After serving for 5 years, I was not supported by the Trump administration for a second term. So Stanford gave me a gift and made me a fellow, the Payne Distinguished Fellow in the Freeman Spogli Institute. And it gave me an opportunity to really begin to study what were the challenges in our food system that were limiting our ability to create a market-based system that provided access to affordable, nutritious food. So Rockefeller provided me with a grant, BCG gave me pro bono staff, and then I had all of the resources of Stanford University behind me. And out of that came not just some writings and a report and a number of speeches, but a new organization, Food Systems for the Future. And our goal at Food Systems for the Future, recognizing that no one organization alone is going to do this, was to provide the partnerships, the policy support, the advocacy that is necessary to support those policies and to support consumer demand, to develop businesses that create an ecosystem that can develop businesses that can make food more affordable and available. And so we have two enterprises because I'm an ambitious kind of woman, okay? And so we have two enterprises. One's a nonprofit, which is the Institute, which does the research, the policy, the advocacy, the outreach, all of that work. And then the other is an impact investment fund. And while I am the CEO and a managing director in the fund, as many of the people who we're talking to invest in our first food is health fund, they say, Ertharin, you know everything I need to know about food. If I have a question about food, I come and ask you, what do you know about money? And so my partners on that side of the business are the former president of Rabobank USA, and two folks with over 25 years of experience in VC and PC and private equity. So I have an amazing team of nutritionists and agro economists, PhDs on the nonprofit side, and these great finance leaders on the venture side. And that's that journey. It got me there to find the cap because I think change in the food system occurs at the intersection of policy, finance, and consumer demand.
So this is why I have the podcast, and then is to kind of talk about these things. And we're actually, so I just had a meeting Monday. So we convened Case Western Reserve University Medical School. We had University Hospitals, Cleveland Clinic, Cleveland Catholic Diocese, Catholic Charities. I had a chef. I had somebody that runs a Food Strong organization. We're trying to solve this problem in East Cleveland. And so I guess what advice can you give to kind of help do that? I mean, that's the reason I reached out to you, just kind of knowing some of the work that you're doing and things that you're doing. This is not an easy problem. In the neighborhood we're talking about, there is not a grocery store in that neighborhood. The only thing they have are convenience stores. There are no fresh foods in that convenience store. That's the only access they have to food.
I know East Cleveland. Okay.
Okay.
And
Okay.
I know
I did
what
not
you're
know that.
I know what you're working with there. I do know what
Okay.
you're working with there. And let me say that the Institute, last year uh, performed a landscape of not food deserts and the why behind food deserts, because that question's been answered, kicked
Yeah.
around,
Yeah.
and depending upon what side you come from, whether it's economics or racism, I said I don't want to have that conversation. That's not the conversation. The conversation we need is what's working in
Yes.
places that would otherwise be food deserts
Yes.
if these entrepreneurs, these community leaders, those who are operating stores in these neighborhoods and struggling to operate stores in these neighborhoods to a person, what are they doing? What's their secret sauce that we need to capture and build an evidence base around, and then help push out into those communities where stores have closed or retailers have made decisions not to open stores in those communities. And so we spent a year talking to those retailers, and they were different formats: nonprofits, for-profits, co-ops, regional stores. They were in some cases they were actually, we found a Stop and Shop, for example, that is a large regional grocery store, but they operate their stores in the inner city differently than they do and their stores that are successful differently than the stores they do in other communities. And what are the things that they're doing? And what we found was, these are lessons that we're looking to push out there: partnership. The community must own this store, because you will find that the stores are the success of the store is directly related to the ability for the store to attract customers on a regular basis into the store. And so if the community does not believe that this store meets their needs, that the store was built for them, that the store delights them, because that's the other thing when we talk about partnership with the community, it needs to be a store that want to shop.
Right.
Too often in stores, when communities come together to open stores, we're forced by economics to cut corners. We don't do the kinds of things. It looks very different than the suburban store I like to shop in, that is light and bright and airy and has new cases and all the things that make me want to shop. Partnering with the community to build a store that delights and open a store that delights that community is a key. Second, addressing head on the issues that reduce or increase the economics in the store, and that is shrink, whether it's from theft or from lost product because it's not purchased, and so you're losing large amounts of produce because your store is being cherry picked. But addressing those issues head on, we found that many stores that operate particularly in low income communities, the internal and external theft in the store directly affects the store's ability to deliver the weekly income that is necessary to support the operation of the store. And this is not something that an issue we can run away from. It's an issue that must be invested in. And every store that was successful, one of their highest costs was the systems that they put in place in order to address the issue of shrink or theft. Yeah. And we can't be ashamed of this. No matter where you're operating, if you're operating on Michigan Avenue in Chicago today, you're dealing with issues of theft. And so let's talk about it head on. And that's back again to that partnership. You want the customer who comes in this store to feel safe.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what you're telling them is you can shop here because this is your store. It's made for you. You're safe here. You want to be here. The other thing that we found was when one of the tools that addresses that shrink issue and also that partnership issue and that safety issue is that we found that the stores work with community organization, whether it's local churches or other
Mm-hmm.
institutions, where people from the leaders from those institutions shop the store at all times of the day. So you have these grandmothers who are walking the aisles and they're walking and they're talking to each other and they know the store manager and he has a pot of coffee brewing, but they shop that store religiously. The
Mm-hmm.
kids shop the store and people feel safe shopping the store. And that's a big factor is dealing with that issue. It's also the issue of cost of goods sold. So often, independent store owners, whether they're regardless of the model, have a challenge accessing the same deals for what's
Mm-hmm.
on the shelf as larger retailers. And so, developing the relationships that will allow for those stores to then access from the trade the deals that are necessary for them to support the prices that will keep customers coming into the store
Mm-hmm.
is
Mm-hmm.
also critical, because if customers say I can go shop at X store and the prices are cheaper, you're going to lose them. And so, one of the outcomes from to support that issue, one of the outcomes from our landscape and our summit of the grocery summit that we hosted to publicize the grocery retail report is the development of what we're calling the GERC. What is the GERC? The GERC is the Grocery Executive Retail Operating Core. We've identified and we've had retail former executives come to us and say, we want to help solve this problem. Sign
Mm-hmm.
us up. It's much like the technocrats. I don't know if you're familiar with them. They bring executives into development projects to support the implementation of the projects to make them more successful.
Mm-hmm.
These are executives who are willing. Our goal is to provide them with a stipend and partner them with a retailer or a community group to help that store build the systems that we're talking about, that to support their ability to talk to the trade, because they all have relationships with the trade, et cetera. And those relationships are a direct response to the operators saying to us, I wish I had somebody I could call
Mm-hmm.
to ask
Mm-hmm.
these questions of, because people think running a grocery store is easy. It's one of the hardest businesses you can ever be in.
Yeah,
It's
and
a
it's not high margin to begin
it's a
with. I mean,
penny's
yeah,
margin
yeah,
business.
yeah.
And so what are the things that I can do that will ensure that I can keep my costs as low as possible, and while driving the sales that are necessary to create the resilience required to keep the doors of the store open.
Mm-hmm.
And so having someone who's a a seasoned executive that you can call up, who is willing to share their secrets with you, the things
Mm-hmm.
they know. Because so often what we heard was, I wish I knew then what I know now. And
Mm-hmm.
the lessons I had to learn to get here are too hard. Or I was just talking to the Illinois Lieutenant Governor just this week, and she was telling me about a store that they'd invested in Cairo, Illinois, that despite the best efforts of the store owner, they were forced to close. They're now in the process of reopening. She said, Ertharin, I would love to have an executive that I can send down to
Mm-hmm.
work with them as they reopen the store to ensure that this time they can keep the store doors open. So, in responding to that kind of an issue, or after a disaster. Okay, think about this. You have these disasters, whether it's the hurricanes in North Carolina or the fires in California. We
Mm-hmm.
often talk about the houses that are burned down, but the businesses burn down too. If
Right.
you're a national retailer, they send in a team to help you get the store clean, to help you get the store reopened, to help you get the shelves back open, to get the cases done. If you're an independent operator or a co-op or a nonprofit community-led store, you don't have access to those kinds
Right.
of resources.
Right.
That's what we're hoping the GERC will provide.
Mm-hmm.
Is in those kinds of situations, we swoop in just like World Central Kitchen and Jose Andres and his team feeding people. We swoop in to help get the grocery stores reopened. Why? Because people define their communities by
Mm-hmm.
whether or not they have an operating grocery store. They do.
Yeah. And the only grocery store I've been in East Cleveland is the Dollar General. And I went
Mm-hmm.
in there for Thanksgiving to buy things.
Mm-hmm.
They only allowed two people in at the store at once. And I had to make three attempts to get in there because they were closed more than they were open. So that is not a community grocery store. So
Yeah.
how do we, one of the things we're trying to do, because we're not going to be, this organization that I'm working with, basically a Catholic diocese,
Mm-hmm.
we want to do education at this center that we're creating, because it's not only just about having
Mm-hmm.
access, it's also
Mm-hmm.
about educating, so
Mm-hmm.
that instead of
Mm-hmm.
buying a bag of potato chips or
Mm-hmm.
whatever's easy, that you're, encouraged to understand how to buy the food, how to make the food,
Mm-hmm.
and so forth. So one of the things we want to do is actually work with the food bank. We've talked to them here in
Mm-hmm.
Cleveland, and not just hand them food, but say, you have to sit in for an hour and see how it's made, talk to a nutritionist, and then we'll give you the food so you know what to do with it when you get home. So that's kind of one of the programs we're looking at.
Yeah, and those programs have some success, and I encourage. I'm a yes and kind of person. Okay, I believe that in order for us to change our food system, to change consumer demand, we're going to need more than one set of
Mm-hmm.
solutions. We need a diversity of solutions that because oftentimes the people who you are telling them they need to sit for an hour so you can show them how to cook the food, one of their most challenging issues is they're time starved. And so it's not that they don't want to cook and
Mm-hmm.
don't know how to cook. They often don't have the time to cook.
Mm-hmm.
And in some places, they don't have the places to cook. And they sometimes don't have pots and pans, okay?
Well, and that's
And,
one of the things we're going to work with them on as well, is having the right utensils to be able to
hmm
get this done. Yes.
And so and the what is required is, yes, we need all of those kinds of programs, but we need
Mm-hmm.
to understand that that's not all we need. We
Right.
need to ensure that people understand what's a diverse and nutritious diet,
Mm-hmm.
because what you want to put on my plate may not be what I want on my plate. And so, what if I want to have an Oreo cookie, that should be okay, fine, but not the whole pack. How
Right.
do we ensure that it's not at the center of the plate? What
Right.
are the
Yes.
conversations about nutrition and diet and health that we're
Mm-hmm.
sharing with customers, regardless of income? Because this is
Mm-hmm.
not an income problem. If you
Right.
look at the rates of obesity in the United States and the growing increase in diet-related disease, it is not just the poor.
That is
And
correct.
so this is an American conversation
Mm-hmm.
that we need to drive. And this is a conversation that we don't just point to the poor and say, you have a problem. And
Mm-hmm.
so in order for you to get this food from me, you're going to need to listen to me tell you how you're going to eat better. This is,
Mm-hmm.
it is much like what is happening now with those who would suggest that we should limit what SNAP beneficiaries can purchase, the amount of sugar, the amount of salt,
Yeah. Yeah.
the challenge is everybody in America, regardless of income, believes that their food choice is right. And so are we taking those rights away from people who we give access to benefits because they are in financial crisis or a financial situation that requires them to access public benefits, when we know that the person who is working and at a low income uh, um, job that is purchasing food is eating a diet that is creating the same types of health challenges in her children as the woman who's getting the SNAP benefits. So that's why
Yeah,
we need
I agree. It's a pervasive
it's
problem.
a
I mean, it's, yeah,
pervasive problem that
yes, yes.
requires a national conversation and
Hmm.
national change. And I am what has always made America who we are, and having the opportunity to serve as ambassador, this was underscored for me, was our ability that we could always do better.
Hmm.
That if you educated, I grew up in a household where my parents were believing in education because they believed that if they could educate their children would have more opportunities.
Hmm. Same in my
And
household.
yeah, and so we can't lose that aspiration for
Hmm.
better. And we need to build this conversation about food and diet into that aspirational conversation because health is also an impediment to you doing better, but an
Right.
opportunity for you to do better as well.
It's also more costly because if you're sick or have a chronic disease, you're going to spend more on medical bills. It's going to be
You have more
it's like a downward
absenteeism.
spiral.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you have
yeah,
more
yeah,
absenteeism.
yeah,
You have higher insurance costs.
yeah, yeah.
You can't, the life that you aspire to, you will not achieve if you do
Hmm.
not have health.
Right. So talk to me a little bit about boards. So you're on Bayer and Monsanto, and those
Hmm.
are not those are large companies that aren't exactly providing fresh products in our stores. So,
Exactly. And that's why I went on it because we need agribusinesses, we need large
mhm,
food companies if we're going to feed 10.5 billion people by 2050. But they can't continue to operate the way they always have.
agreed, agreed.
And so, as opposed to standing on the outside throwing bricks, what better place than to have a seat in the boardroom to discuss what is a sustainable production inside Bayer, to
Hmm.
discuss how we market and package Oreo cookies inside Mondelez. And so, and then when I went on each of those boards, I specifically, Bear wanted someone who had political capital in the sustainability community. And I
Hmm.
told them I was willing to come on board because I knew that for all the issues you can talk about with Monsanto, the reason they bought Monsanto is because of the biological patents and digital patents inside Monsanto that will support our ability to perform precision agriculture and regenerative agriculture in the future that will protect our soils and provide us with the food products that we need for healthier consumption.
So they are
And so
talking about sustainable, regenerative. Those
they're talking
conversations
about
are
sustainable. I chair the
okay.
sustainability committee. I chair their sustainability, so I get
Okay.
to ask the hard questions every 4 months.
Nice.
I am working with the CEO, and they said we want your voice, and I said okay, you want me, I'll come and do it. But if I feel as if the company's no longer listening, then I won't. And so I said the same thing is true of Mondelez. I sit on their governance committee as well, and we have the tough conversations. But the one thing I know about large corporations is large corporations are people. The
Hmm.
people. They have stakeholders that are their employees, their suppliers, the communities in which they operate, as well as their shareholders.
Hmm.
And so, working to ensure that they're meeting the the responsibilities to all those stakeholders and not just to the shareholders is what the company must do on a daily basis if it expects to succeed and provide shareholder value. They have to meet the
Hmm.
needs of those stakeholders. And so having the conversations inside the company about their employee base, about the health of their employees and as well as the products that they sell is a big piece of business. And that's why I'm there.
Okay. Good. I'm glad you're there. Based on those conversations. That's fantastic. So if somebody wanted to do what we're trying to do in East Cleveland, you said you're familiar with East Cleveland. What
Hmm.
would be the first thing somebody taking a step to improve food access, food
Hmm.
nutrition, food education? Because we do have the good news is we have the interest of a lot of organizations to
Yep.
do something. So
Yep.
that's the first step.
And I'm sure you've done this if you have the interest of those organizations inside the community, is make them my partners.
Mm-hmm.
That my success is your success. And so having the community meetings where they buy in and they feel as if they have ownership interest
Mm-hmm.
in the success of the store. And I have a friend, Lanier Richardson, who just opened a store in East Baltimore. He's a
Mm-hmm.
financier, and one of the things that he did was sold shares in the store to the community organizations, to the churches, to so that they
It's
own. They
interesting.
not only do
Okay.
they have a a social uh, skin in the game, but they have financial skin in the game.
Hmm.
It helped him raise the other revenue that he needed to support the construction and the operating capital that was necessary for the store. But it also, as I said, gave that ownership for the community into the store. So that's a tool. It won't work in
Okay.
every community,
Mm-hmm.
but it's the possibility of it is good. The other
Mm-hmm.
thing that you need to do is identify where are the subsidies and the financial support that is necessary, whether it's ground leases, the supporting the ground leases that reduce the capex costs for the construction of the
Mm-hmm.
store, or it is ongoing capital that is necessary. I have a store in Wisconsin that the church actually provides a monthly stipend to the store that they can add on to a consumer's purchasing power.
Hmm.
So because of where they're located, every consumer who needs it, who asks for it, is
Mm-hmm.
eligible for a $50 coupon
Hmm.
for their shopping experience.
Hmm.
That is that's provided and supplemented by this church that
Okay.
gives the consumer the ability to purchase additional food, but also brings additional income into the store.
Mm-hmm. Okay. See,
So
you get
it's
some.
all those
Yeah.
kinds of
Yeah.
ideas.
Yeah.
So, but again, partnership is critical to making that happen. One last example of something that you can do, because most stores will do a market survey before the store is open to determine whether or not there's enough income in the operating area to
Mm-hmm.
support the ongoing financial requirements of the store. One store in Tulsa, the Oasis Food Market in Tulsa, one of the tools that they're using is they went to the local bar association, the local accounting association, the businesses, and you don't have a lot of those in East Cleveland, but you have
No.
them in some of the surrounding communities
Yeah.
that want to see East Cleveland become successful, and they created partnerships where those businesses purchase their produce, their soda, their water from the store on a weekly or monthly basis. Again, increasing the income in the store to
Hmm.
support the sustainability of the store.
Mm-hmm. Great ideas. Thank you. So why? How do you know about East Cleveland? You said you know about East Cleveland from.
I told you I was the executive director of Feeding America, the deputy
Yeah,
executive
I know.
director of
I know.
Feeding
Yeah.
America.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I visited East Cleveland when I was
Okay.
in that role.
Okay.
And because even the food bank struggled to operate in East
Mm-hmm.
Cleveland. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, because there are locations where Feeding America, the food bank, is in East Cleveland, but not on
Mm-hmm.
a. Yeah, it's like on a
Mm-hmm.
Saturday.
Yeah.
Okay. So what are your thoughts? You're well educated. Um, and we're trying, part of what we want to do at the center too is kind of educate people not only on food, but we want to provide financial education,
Mm-hmm.
education about how to
Mm-hmm.
prevent diabetes, cancer,
Mm-hmm.
some other things. So
Mm-hmm.
what are your thoughts just on education in neighborhoods such as these?
Spot on. When you were talking about giving cooking classes, and I don't mean to demonize cooking classes. So I just want they may not be the end all to be all, but
It's part of a
it's
solution.
part of a
Yeah,
solution.
yeah,
It's a
yeah,
yes and.
yeah.
And the and includes financial literacy. It includes, in some neighborhoods, reading classes, in other neighborhoods,
Mm-hmm.
English classes, in other neighborhoods, the Girl Scout troop, the Boy Scout troop, the meet at the grocery store in the community meeting room.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever those tools are that you can use that will bring the community into the store
Mm-hmm.
On a regular basis, that this is their place of gathering. This store becomes important to the community for the social and economic health of the community, the better. Um, when during the first riots in LA after the Rodney King beating, Albertsons, I was at Albertsons at the time, the community surrounded the store and would
Mm.
not let the looters come into the store because they said, "This is our store."
Mm. Wow. That's a statement.
That's a statement.
Mm. That's very
How do you
cool.
build that kind of
Yeah.
relationship
Yeah.
with the leadership in the community? They say, "This is ours and not here."
Mm-hmm.
Because so
Okay.
often
Well,
they feel like these stores are extractive and
right.
they
Right.
don't belong to the community because they're
Well, and
not.
we are, sorry, I didn't mean it, but I
No,
mean,
go
we are
ahead.
going to start to have community meetings to kind of,
Mm-hmm,
yeah, vet out what is needed, what people would like to see. So we are going
mm-hmm,
to start. We don't just want to plop something into a
mm-hmm,
neighborhood without getting the
mm-hmm.
community involved. So,
Well, this is great. And you guys sound like you're doing exactly what's necessary to, and even then, I just want to, I don't want any of your listeners to think that this makes it easier, because this is hard.
it is hard. Yeah.
If it was easy, we would have solved this by now.
Right. Right.
But because it is hard, because it requires creativity and imagination and hope where others would say not possible,
Mm-hmm.
even in implementing the kinds of solutions that we say. As one of my grocers told me, I still have a lot of sleepless nights. I still have a lot of sleepless nights. But if you're committed to bringing fresh, affordable retail food into your community,
Mm-hmm.
this is the work that is required.
Okay. So, one, I'd like to stay in touch with you because you have
Okay.
some very interesting programs and experiences that I do not have at this point. So,
Okay.
and two, we always close the show on a recipe. So, what recipe would you recommend? This is something I'll post on my website that we're trying to get people not to go through the drive-through, but to cook meals at home. So,
Sure, sure. This is a one of those Friday evening recipes that my son and I would do when he was in high school, and it's a fusilli pasta
oh,
that is just a boiled pasta.
mm-hmm,
And you can use the spiral fusilli or you can use penny pasta or something else. And chopped up vegetables, an onion, a piece of celery, tomato. Um, I'm not a mushroom eater, but you can add mushrooms, squash, whatever you can get on sale. Just,
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
4, 5, 6 vegetables and a can of tuna. Okay.
Okay,
Cook the pasta, mix all the vegetables into the pasta, and then you use Italian salad dressing. Salt
okay,
and pepper to taste. You have a whole meal. Lots of proteins, lots of vegetables. Done.
okay.
And don't overcook the pasta.
Yeah, that's always a mistake. Yeah, make sure it's al dente.
Al
Yes.
dente, particularly when you mix the vegetables into it, because you need the pasta to maintain its consistency, particularly if you have teenage boys.
Mm-hmm.
You okay?
All right, sounds
All
great. I
right.
think for the salad dressing, I think I'm going to substitute lemon and olive oil.
I was about to say you can do olive oil. You
Mm-hmm.
can make your own.
Mm-hmm.
You can use olive oil, lemon, vinegar, honey, oregano, but
Yeah.
you wanted me to keep it fast
Yes.
and keep
Yes.
it inexpensive.
Yes. Yes.
So yes, you can create your own olive oil, but there's a shortcut. But if you have the time and the resources to use olive oil, vinegar, honey, mustard to make a salad dressing, go for it.
All right. Fantastic. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Appreciate you being on the show today. Have a
Thanks. You
great.
know how to reach me if you need me.
I know
Okay.
how to reach you. Yes. All right.
Thanks
Thank
a
you very
lot. Take
much.
care.
All right.
Bye
All
bye.
right. Thanks, Earth. As I mentioned a few minutes ago, my sponsor is Cleveland Kitchen, the leader in fresh fermented foods. Try Cleveland Kitchen's crunchy and delicious krauts, kimchi, pickles packed with probiotics to support your gut health while elevating your meals from the ordinary to the extraordinary. Cleveland Kitchen, where taste meets wellness. Find it in the produce or deli section of your local grocery retailer or visit clevelandkitchen.com for more information. Thank you for listening to the show. Please follow the show every week where you listen to podcasts. As I mentioned, subscribe and rate the show, and we'll talk to you next week. Thank you.